Brian, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Mark, thanks a lot. That's quite the intro. I appreciate that.
No, we're gonna circle back to Declan James, but again, I cannot have a SEAL on here without touching on this a little bit more in depth. So break down your SEAL career for us, if you will, because I know it's maybe a little atypical, or maybe not. I don't know, but you were active duty for several years and went reserves, and now you've been called back into service. Did I get that kind of timeline correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So I don't know that the career is atypical. At the time, it surely was. I joined the Navy with intent of becoming a Navy SEAL at age 29, which at that time was very atypical. I did that for a number of years, 8 years roughly, got out, became a civilian. At that time, I started Declan James Watch Co. Also joined the reserves. And then within the last, I've done that for about 2-3 years, and then got called back to active duty, which is where I am now.
Yeah, man. Well, before I forget, thank you for your service. Obviously, you're watching this, guys, and I've pointed this out before. I've got a flag and some of my grandfather's World War II medals on the wall behind me. I just have the utmost respect for veterans. And so thank you for your service and your sacrifice. I know you've got family that you're away from. So hats off to you, man. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's talk about the fact that you joined the Navy when you were 29, you said?
Yeah.
So yeah. I have to assume, maybe it's an incorrect assumption. Did that make you the old man in boot camp?
It did. And I had a problem with that. I don't know why. To this day, looking back on the experience, I definitely had a problem with it. I think everyone going through BUD/S, which is SEAL selection, has their own issues that they deal with, whether it's they're immature, being away from home, navigating life in the military. By and large, a lot of my problems that I put on myself were the fact that I was older than everyone. And so I felt I had to be stronger, better, faster, smarter than everyone.
Sure.
And oftentimes that really wasn't the case. But because I did put that undue pressure on myself, it made a miserable time a lot more miserable.
Yeah, that's understandable because, there's dudes that go through that, obviously. And even though you're older, like you said, you may not be the strongest or the fittest of them out there. But I got to think that you brought maybe some wisdom or street cred that others didn't have.
I would like to think so. Being at 29, I felt like maybe I brought a little bit more of a work ethic, but it was also challenging too for me in the sense that I had enjoyed this cushy civilian life for such a long time that I got used to, and then being thrust into this experience where they didn't care who I was, what I did, or where I came from. So by and large, my struggles were something I put on myself, but just adjusting to this military lifestyle. I didn't grow up in a military family. When I told my parents I want to join the military at 29, their jaws dropped to the floor. And it wasn't that they weren't supportive. They're just like, what are you talking about? And so I'd like to think I brought a little bit to the table, and maybe I did. I don't know, but maybe a little bit more maturity to the program. But I guess you'd have to ask my classmates.
So, what year was that you joined up?
So I joined in 2009, 2010, and I was working commercial real estate prior, buying and selling apartment complexes for an apartment REIT, which I'm going to steal a word from your previous guest, or a phrase from your previous guest, which I loved, but he had said, and I apologize, I forgot his name. I know he's a good friend of yours. He said, failing to thrive. And I was basically failing to thrive in my previous life prior to the Navy. And I had someone a mentor of mine, someone who I'd worked for. You don't just wake up one day and say you want to join the Navy SEALs. It's something maybe you think about for a very long time, or you have a friend who did it, or you come across and you start to obsess about it. And I had obsessed about it for a very long time, but I was in the civilian lifestyle, not enjoying it, failing to thrive. My mentor at the time was prior military. And at 29, he basically said, dude, you got to go. You go now, or you're just going to hate yourself for the rest of your life. And he was right. I went, and it was the best decision I made in my entire life thus far. Hopefully, I'll make better ones, but it was a good one.
Yeah, because what's the age cutoff to join the military? Is it 30 or 34 or something like that?
It was 29. So I had
Oh,
signed
what?
I had signed on the dotted line when I was 28, and I had turned 29 in boot camp. And I remember I don't know, I was like I remember talking to my parents. I'm like, don't send me a card, don't send me a birthday card. I don't want, like, I had in my mind that, like, it was just going to be this big old haze fest. I didn't want any other undue attention to me with a birthday card that my parents sent me. So I spent my 29th birthday in boot camp, probably in the push-up position.
Oh man. So is there, when you think back over your time in the SEALs and in the Navy, I mean, what's one moment or maybe one lesson that stands above all the rest that you took away from that time and have maybe carried over into fatherhood?
There's That's a really good question. There's a lot of lessons, and people have heard me say this before. I wish everyone could have the opportunity to go through BUDS or SEAL selection, because for me, it gave me so much in life, and I really feel in the 6 months and even extended on the, my 8-year career, it's taught me all of life's lessons, or what I feel are life's lessons. And I'm sure those close to me are just tired of, I got an antidote lesson for everything, right? They're just like, shut up, Brian. Like, we got it. You're a Navy SEAL. Shut up. But I think one of the biggest things that I've carried over into fatherhood that I'm hoping to instill in my kids is that really they can do anything, and it's up to them what they decide to do in life. And by that, I remember going through the program, and I don't know. I mean, I'm just a tall, skinny guy, and I've been a tall, skinny guy my entire life. And when I was going through the program, I remember looking at the guy to the left of me and the guy to the right of me, and it's these guys are like Herculean gods, just muscles everywhere. And I remember just thinking to myself, God, like, I don't know that, like, this is who I'm competing against,
Right.
right? Like, I'm the small guy on the team here. And as I went through the program, as I progressed through the program, I noticed that those were the first guys to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it was just up to me. It wasn't that I was competing against those guys to my left and right. It was that I was competing against the voice inside my head that said I couldn't do it, or I'm not going to make it, or get up. It's those two voices inside your head that say go forward or just stay down because you're tired. And that was the biggest eye opener for me, is really the competition is not with the outside or external environment. It's within yourself. It's within your mind of moving forward. And I hope my sons are young now. They're 6 and 2, and it might be more of a difficult lesson for them to learn until they get older, but that's really what I hope what I can bring to my father, being a father with them, is that it's up to them what they want to do in life, and it's only them who's going to decide whether they move forward or not.
Yeah, man. Well, if that's the biggest thing you took away, I think that's huge. That's a lesson that I think so many guys battle with. Um, I know that I have. I mean, I'm in the process of kind of starting my own business, and you have as well, which we're going to get into. And you get into the comparison games of like, oh, you've got the people out there that you kind of keep your eye on, you kind of aspire towards, and it's easy to get caught up into the comparison game. But at the end of the day, you're battling against yourself from yesterday. As long as you be better than yourself yesterday, then you're moving in the right direction. And I think that's a key lesson for life.
I think so. And don't get me wrong, I don't wake up every morning and think to myself, I still have my internal struggles. There's still that voice that pops in my head that's like, maybe you're just too tired, or maybe you're too old. And then, sometimes it's within minutes, be like, I'm telling that other voice to shut up, or maybe it's like a couple of days or whatever. I still have those internal battles. I just think what's different, and I think maybe you could probably attest to this because you're starting your own business and you understand, is for some reason it's obvious to you and me, having been through an experience or going through an experience, that it's up to you, but it's not obvious to a lot of people. And I think that I just have the fortunate circumstances of being able to recognize that a lot sooner than most people, or people who can't at all.
Yeah, I think you're right that awareness is half the battle, right? Because like you said, because some people they're totally clueless. They just caught up in the everyday, and they don't realize that they're comparing themselves to this or that or this person and their success. And
right.
Yeah, so I think being aware of it that's step one for sure. So you've got two sons. Let's kind of segue, even though I'd like to talk about the steels all day, every day. You've got two sons, two and 6, right?
Correct.
So give us the rest of your dad bio. What have you got going on at home?
Well, home is different now. I'm sure home is different for you. COVID has, I mean, I think you'll probably tell me that every age has its own challenges.
For sure.
But for my 6-year-old, you know, COVID hit and they went to remote learning. He was in kindergarten, and that was a struggle for us. And we finally found a school that can. I would say the biggest struggle is getting into a routine with this COVID stuff, because it's as soon as we feel like we got into a routine. I just got an email that, you know, my home state Denver is starting to restrict more movement and put more COVID rules in place. So it seems to me like every time we seem to get into a routine, something else happens. So this is a really weird year, and everyone knows that, and everyone, you know, we've heard that 1,000 times. But yeah, I've got 2 boys. I got a wife. It's great. We live in Denver. That's my home state. And so right now we're just navigating. Well, I'll say this: my wife, who's raising my boys right now because I'm gone, is really just navigating, taking care of the kids. She has a job that she's trying to work, and so she's got her hands full, and I admire her for that, because I know when I have my boys for a couple days by myself, there's a few minutes in those days I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And she's got that for a while.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we like to shine a light on folks like yourself, but we don't want to forget about the other, you know, whether it's a husband or wife back at home dealing with kids and raising families. It's a huge sacrifice. So yeah.
I'm thankful.
Noticed.
I'm thankful. My youngest son Nolan, he's 2 years old, and so with me being gone, I feel like he doesn't quite get it yet, and so that's just, in terms of not getting it, I feel like that's one less person I have to worry about. But my oldest son, he gets it. He understands. There's been numerous times it cracks me up and also breaks my heart. He says, "Dad, can't you just quit?" I'm like, "No, I can't quit. Like, I just can't." He's like, "Well, just get fired then." I'm like, who are you talking to that my 6-year-old is telling me to quit to get fired so I can just come home? And he says, "Well, why don't you just write a letter and go to your boss's desk and slam it on the desk and then walk out?" I'm like, where are you getting this? But, you know, despite me being gone, and he understands, I think a little bit, I think he's doing well, because, you know, he seems to be processing things very well at his age.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Declan James. I guess first question that comes to my mind, knowing that what your name is, where did the name Declan James come from?
So Declan James is after my oldest son. His full name is Declan James Dougherty. And as I was going down this endeavor of starting a watch company, I was researching for months and months about watch names, about company names. And every name that I wanted to use for a company was taken in one form or fashion. And then I started noticing that not a lot, but there's a decent amount of watch companies that are named after founders. And, you know, Brian Dougherty just doesn't have a sexy ring to it as Declan James does. And I was very hesitant at first to pick my son's name, because I don't want my son's name to be out there. I want my son, initially I didn't, I wanted my son's name to be out there when he wanted to be out there, because we live in this social world and it's all connected. But I started to think about the reason why I wanted to start this company, and part of it was to build a legacy and to teach my kids the life lessons that I learned as a Navy SEAL. I wanted to teach them through entrepreneurship, because I think there's a lot of similarities, quite frankly, between the two, in terms of, you know, picking yourself up and moving forward. But once I didn't come across, I started thinking about Declan James. I said, you know, this is probably really good. I like it. It's got a good ring to it. And not only it fits my purpose in life for this company is to give him something that he can take with him, whether it's the watch company or the lessons or an experience that we had. I just thought maybe it was a good gift. You know, this is for you. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I will start another company for my other son. I have to, and I want to, but that's really how I arrived at that Declan James Watch Company for a name.
That's a great name. I mean, for those people listening and watching, if you haven't seen pictures of the watches, and we'll link over to the website so everybody can find that easily. When you see a picture of the watches, all of them, I mean, they're sharp and they just look
Thank you.
like you need to be wearing a suit when you wear one. And the name Declan James just like pops. It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
sounds classy.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's good to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. So out of all the things that you could have done, why a watch company? I mean, I kind of talked about why I like watches and what comes to mind for me, but I mean, what led you to starting a watch company?
This is a good question. So I literally just wrote a blog about this on my website, and
Oh,
and,
nice.
and shameless plug, if I will, DeclanJamesWatchCo.com. But when I was little, I had a good friend growing up who gave me a watch, and I was in maybe kindergarten or first grade. I don't quite remember what grade it was, but he gave me a watch for my birthday, and ever since then, that watch just ignited this crazy obsession about watches for me. And I've always liked watches. I love that they're super functional, like they're super relevant in our lives. I love, now that I'm older, I love mechanical watches because it's old school. The mechanical watch hasn't changed really since the 1900s. I mean, sure, like the manufacturing process has changed, the materials have changed, but if you take it apart, it's pretty much the same watch since the 1900s.
It's
And
crazy.
I romanticize about it. I think it's awesome. And in this day and age, in technology and fast moving things, and people always looking at their wrists for, it's dinging and it's lighting up, and that's fine. I'm not knocking smartwatches by any means. I have one. I have a purpose for it. But after that purpose is done, I put it back in my drawer, and I put on my regular watch. I just love them. I think they're super functional. It's it I'm obsessed about them, really. But it all started from my buddy who gave me a watch in kindergarten or first grade. And I just obsessed about it ever since.
That's cool. It's funny because I was just thinking about our conversation leading up to today, and I've always kind of been fascinated by watches as well, like the old school, like the mechanical watches.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said, the subtleties of the technology have changed and evolved over the years, but like you can go back hundreds of years and they were making timepieces that basically work the same way. And that blows my mind. And it just got me thinking, what person in his right mind this day and age would think about starting a watch company? That person would probably have to have the mentality of a Navy SEAL. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Somebody who
think
thinks
about
they
that.
can do anything in the world.
you know, and like I said, I have my moments, and sometimes I'm like, and you said you're starting your own business, and so you can relate to this. It's an emotional roller coaster. There's ups
Yeah.
and downs, and sometimes I think to myself, like, why a watch company? Like, you could have spent your money on a lot better things and easier things, but it just seemed to really all fall into place with what I wanted to do. I mean, like you said, watches have been being made for hundreds of years, and that's a legacy thing. And oftentimes they start off as a family business or a business between, cousins or brothers, and where they are today, they're still in existence. A lot of those famous brands that we're familiar with have been in existence for 200 years. And so that's a legacy company as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And so with me trying to create a legacy for my kids and teaching that stuff, it just kind of all fell into place. Like, I love watches. It's a legacy thing. It's traditionally known as a family business. It just seemed to make sense. It makes more sense as I get into this, and it just falls into place for me.
Yeah, man. Well, it's super cool. So I'm curious, when you're not on active duty and you're back at home and your days look a little bit more normal, what is your day to day look like as somebody who's running a watch company? Are you like literally assembling watches, or what's your day look like?
Well, with kids, there's not one day that's the same, and sometimes. So what I do is I have a process where I design it's Swiss movement, and the movements are imported, and I'll design my watches, and then I have a company that will manufacture the cases. And so they ship all that stuff to me, and then we assemble them together. And most of my time is developing content for the company. And as you know, content, is kind of how you speak to people in this day and age. I mean, you do tons of it, and you know it. Most of my time is doing that. I do have another job that I've only been doing this. I've launched this for I'm going on my 3rd year, and things are growing great, and I love it. But I started off in the real estate business, and that's all I know. I do have another job developing mobile home communities that I work for another company. So my time is split between my watches and, the job that I also like. I feel very fortunate in life. I have a great family. I'm doing 2 things in my life that I love. So my biggest challenge right now is just, and I hope to do both those things my entire life. Someone asked me last night, well, what about when your watch company in 10 years is making all the money you want to make? And my response was, well, if I'm making all the money I need to make for my watch company, I will probably start doing more real estate. So that because I also like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that gives you a little bit better picture of how chaotic it can get.
Well, and really, if you're doing something that you love or things that you love, who cares about retirement? You just keep doing what you love, right?
Yeah, I think for me, that's kind of what I figured out in life, is that just do the things that you love and do it with the people that you love. And things hopefully will start to fall in place for you. So I feel fortunate in that aspect.
Amen, man. Yeah. So when it comes to Declan James, do you feel like at least your older kid, your 6-year-old, who may still be a little young yet, but do you feel like he grasps what you've done and what you're trying to build?
Yeah, I think so. I think he grasps or understands that I have a business and it's selling watches. And it's interesting how kids, they know so much more. Sometimes they know so much more than we give them credit for, and sometimes they don't.
Absolutely.
But he's funny, because I remember when I first launched this company, he's like, "Hey, Dad, let's go sell watches." I was like, "All right." And so we set up a stand in the courtyard like we're selling lemonade, and we made some signs and everything, and I just went through this whole process with him, and I'm trying to encourage him. And he's like, no one can hear us. I'm like, okay, like, all right, well, what do you propose? He's like, well, let's start yelling. And he starts yelling, "Declan James Watch Co, Declan James Watch Co." And he's like, that's not really working. Let's go door to door. And I was like, all right, let's go door to door. So we go to a couple neighbors' house I know, and I ring the doorbell, and I'm like winking at them. I'm like, help me out here. And but I'm looking back on that experience, and he's like, he's just like he's going through this whole marketing process of getting he's like internalizing this and thinking about it. I'm like, wow, you're really like. And oftentimes when I struggle with stuff, I think back to that moment. I'm like, sometimes it can be just that simple. Maybe you're just in the courtyard when you need to be going door to door. And it's funny how I set out to teach him about life, and yet he became a reminder for me about life. And maybe that's the purpose of kids. I don't know. But yeah, he grasped it. And I'll do some posts online with him, and I'll blur his face out because I'm very conscious about, again, putting his image out there. And the other day, he's like, "Why are you blurring my face out? Next time you post about me, don't blur my face out." And I'm like, "Are you giving me permission to do this? Are you sure?" But I'll continue to blur his face out for a while. I mean, at least his direct likeness, I'll continue to blur out for a little bit. But it's interesting. That's just the day and age that we live in. Like, for me, social media was never a thing, and now I still find it strange that people post so much stuff about their family.
Yeah.
And it's not that for me, I'm like, my son's going to get older, and he's going to be out there, and it's not going to be his decision. It was going to be my decision. So I try to be very deliberate about putting my son and his image and his likeness out there. But I don't really need him to sell my watches. That's not, I don't need his face out there selling my watches, but it is part of my story. So I do try to incorporate it in a little bit.
Well, it's cool that he's latched onto it and he's so willing to pound the pavement for Dad.
So I think what's going to happen is when he gets older, he's not going to want anything to do with the watch company. My youngest son Nolan is probably going to want everything to do with the watch company, and the other company I start for him, which I think will probably be in real estate in some form or fashion, they're going to swap.
Well, that was going to be my other question, was what plans you had to include them. And like you said, they're going to want to go their own ways, but I would assume at the same time, you'll try to lay a path for him to follow should he choose to. So what might that look like?
For both my boys?
Yeah. I mean, if they both want to pursue the watch thing.
Oh, I would love it. And part of me to this day, we weren't going to have a second kid, but part of me to this day does feel somewhat guilty that I put a lot of my energy into a company named after his older brother. Should they both want to do it, I think that's great, and that's fine. And if they both want to do it, if my youngest son wants to get into that, it will be a sign to me that he really doesn't care that it's named after his brother, which I don't think he should, but I think that'll be great if they both want to get involved with it. I think that'll make me very happy, 100%.
Yeah.
I was talking to a buddy the other day, and we have this. I want my sons to be who they want to be, 100%. And as a father, I feel it's my obligation to lay out a solid foundation for them that they can succeed at whatever they want to do in life. And probably I might push them, or inadvertently I might push them to the things that I'm most interested in. I think that's perhaps natural because that's all I know is the things I'm interested in. And right. I can just be there to encourage him about the things he becomes interested in. But I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and my kids, it's going to happen. They're not going to want to have anything to do with what I'm interested in. Maybe not. I don't know. But, I started this company for them. I'm going to start another company for them. They could easily grow up and say, you know what, Dad, this is all your stuff. I'm not interested in it. And that's fine, because I would not have failed. I would have failed if I see them struggle in life. And for me, I would just see them struggle in life and they didn't pick themselves back up, or they didn't keep moving forward. That's where I feel like, at least now as we have this conversation, that might be where I have failed. They want nothing to do with this. That's fine. I've always said that whatever they do in life, I just want them to have the ability to be number one at it, or at least be happy at what they're doing. And so I hope through entrepreneurship and these businesses, they learn that.
100%. And I was sitting here thinking, whether they do or don't pursue this business, you're building something that, even though it has the name of your son, it's bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
At least in my mind, it is. Like you said, teaching them the value of hard work, teaching them the importance of quality, and giving it your all. And those are things that they may not learn elsewhere, but they're watching their old man do it. And those are lessons they're going to live on.
Yeah. I never, your kids, and I'd be curious if your grandkids do this also, but I realize that your kids really do watch you. They watch everything you do. And everything, I'll go on walks with my boys and I'll spit on the sidewalk, and then I'll my youngest son is making these weird noises. I'll look over and he's also trying to spit.
Yeah, man.
And I remember when I had this realization with my older son, I was like, they really do look to you for everything. And everyone says that. You're like, yeah, I got that. I'm their dad, but this is really happening. I'm witnessing this firsthand. And I read this quote, and I don't know where I read it, and it was something to the extent of, a father and son are walking through a forest, and the father says to the son, be careful where you step. And the son replies, you be careful where you step. I'm following in your footsteps.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, I really have a great opportunity to do something great, and I could really screw this up for him too. So yeah, I've become a lot more deliberate with what I want to teach my kids. And I hope that through this whole process, they see that with me struggling, picking myself up, and through business and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No,
this.
Yeah, I do. But it's easy to forget when you get caught up in the everyday. But you're absolutely right. Our kids they're sponges and they're mirrors, and they are tape recorders and use all the analogies you want to. Like they look to us to model life, and they're going to pick up the good and the bad and everything in between. So it really sheds light on the importance of our role as fathers, for sure.
Yeah. And I think about legacy, and I'm not going to be the person that saves the world. It's not going to happen. It's not in my cards. It's not that I don't want humanity to be great and all that stuff, but it's not going to be me. But I think about the legacy and what my parents gave me. I mean, my parents gave me the courage and strength to become a Navy SEAL. And I don't know, whatever their parents gave them that they gave me to become a Navy SEAL. And I look at my kids, I'm like, all right, you got to be deliberate about this, because your kids might be your kids might be the ones that save the world. And if it's not their kids, it's a legacy that you leave them, and maybe it's their kids. And so I try to be deliberate about like this legacy process. And as I became a father, I really started thinking about, I'm like, wow, it's kind of what you do and don't do that leaves a good or a bad legacy.
Yeah.
And so my intent is to leave a good legacy. And I think a lot of people's intent are, but I don't know I know you think about it. I don't know if other people think about it, quite frankly.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody thinks about it. Like we talked about at the beginning of the show, I think it starts with just an awareness that the way you lead your life, you're setting the stage, and you're setting an example for your kids, and that's a part of your legacy. And so you just have to be intentional about it, because you're going to leave a legacy whether you try to or not. And it can be a good one or a bad one, like you said. So yeah, just being aware of it and then walking through life with intentionality is key.
It's hard.
It is hard, especially when you've got so many influences out there telling you, trying to persuade you and tempt you to not live the way we should be. It's a daily struggle, for sure.
Yeah.
So 60 years from now, it's kind of hypothetical, big picture question. So 60 years from now, say, you're gone, but your kids are, they're out there and they're wearing a Declan James watch, and somebody pulls them aside and they make a comment about this watch that they're wearing. What do you want your kids to say about you, about the company, and just what it means to the family name?
Oh, wow. That's a very poignant question. You gave me goosebumps here. There's a lot of stories about fathers giving their sons or daughters the watches that they wore throughout their adulthood, and people write about this stuff. And I didn't want to just give my sons a watch. I wanted to give them something greater, the watch company, the legacy, all those lessons. So 60 years from now, when someone asks about it and what I want them to say, right? That's what you're asking me. What I hope to say.
Yeah.
I hope that they can say at the end of the day, my dad loved me. I hope that they can say it with pride. And if they're wearing the watch and someone's asking them, I'm sure that they can say it with pride. But I hope they can say my dad loved me. And if I fail at anything, that's one thing that's going to be certain, is that I loved them. And as they look back and they feel those memories and they look back on it, I hope that they can say that I gave them everything I had to give them. And they might not be aware of that until they have their own kids or they get older. But if they can say that, I think I'd be happy. I mean, at the end of the day, if they say my dad loved me and he gave me everything he had to give, I would be happy with that. I'd be happy with that for sure.
That's a good answer, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. Unconditional love. If you can do that right, everything else takes care of itself, I think.
I hope so. I really do hope so. Yeah.
So switching gears here a little bit,
Okay.
I believe that as men, we were designed for more than what the world has modeled to us the past few decades. Kind of like we were just talking about here a second ago. I think that includes being bold and taking calculated risks. Everything that you've done as both a SEAL and as a business owner. So to guys listening or watching who, maybe feel a pull towards something greater but are kind of stuck in this life of just a mundane reality, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to those guys? Just kind of light a fire in their belly to do something bigger and bolder.
I was stuck in that mundane lifestyle prior to me joining the Navy SEALs. I was doing real estate. The economy had tanked in 2007, 2008. It was just, I was failing to thrive, as your previous guest had noted. I would say to them that, well, it's interesting. So for some reason, I didn't want to do anything. Like, I wasn't motivated to excel at work. I wasn't motivated to go back to school. Like, I literally just lost all my motivation. It was like I was a zombie waking up and living this existence that, quite frankly, was not interesting to me. I was there. I understand the pain that those people are in right now. For some reason, I had enough foresight in my life, and to this day, I can't figure it out. I remember thinking to myself as I'm going through this process in my head of like, what does this all mean? Like, what is going on? Like, I can't live the next 50 years like this. Like, this can't be what my life's all about. I remember thinking to myself that if I was on my deathbed and my grandchild came to me and I had one thing to say to him, what would I say? And I'm not this smart of a guy. I'm not this insightful in life. I mean, at least not to other people. And I remember thinking to myself, whatever that answer is, that is my answer in life. Whatever advice on my deathbed that I would give my grandchild, that is my advice in life. And I was like, okay, well, that's a start. And then I continued to think about this. And ultimately, the end of the answer was, do what you need, follow your heart. Go, like, don't be afraid. Like, go do it. Go do it. Get up. Do what you feel passionate about. Don't worry about what other people think, because quite frankly, it's your life. It's not their life. And no one knows you better than you, despite what anyone else might say. Like, you know, and that changed my whole trajectory in life. It literally sent me on this path that I'm much happier in life doing what I want to do. I'm much happier. I feel a sense of pride inside that I did something for myself at the time. And as we get older, you know, you do stuff for other people, but like I went in a direction for myself. It wasn't a direction for someone else. I remember my parents trying to talk me out of doing this. All my friends thought I was crazy. I had so many, I did have, my family did support me. And my parents ultimately, I mean, they were always on board. They always supported me, but they were just like, are you sure? You know, and once I was able to push all that noise aside and just go in the direction I wanted to go, the world opened up to me. I kid you not. The world literally opened up to me, and I was a much happier person in life. And for people who are struggling to do something, my advice is to think about the advice you would give your grandchild on your deathbed. And whatever that answer is, that's probably what you need to do.
It's good, man. That's good perspective. Love it.
Yeah.
Brian, we're pushing our time here.
Okay.
Where can people follow Declan James Watch Company, support what you're trying to build, what you have built, and just stay connected and kind of keep tabs on the next latest watch coming out?
Absolutely. So you can go to my profile on Facebook is Declan James Watch Co. On Instagram, actually it is Declan James Watch Co. is also. My website is www.declanjameswatchco.com. You know, follow us. We're getting ready to put out some new content, new watches. We're in the process of designing new watches. You know, it's the holiday season. We're coming out with some discounts for the holiday season.
Nice.
Yeah. Those where they can go. That's where they can go, excuse me, to find out, to stay engaged and to follow us.
Awesome, man. Well, Brian, thank you again. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the watches that you make and the legacy you're leaving your sons, and the message you had to share with us today. It was great. Loved it.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been an honor to be on your show. It's always warming to talk to other people who care about the legacy they leave behind, who are deliberate about it. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.